You feel it, don't you? That silent, sneaky voice deep within your chest, the one that rustles shadows when you muster the courage to begin anew. It's a subtle tormentor, whispering doubts and weaving fears when you decide to cast off the chains of yesterday. This inner adversary, cloaked in familiarity, sneers with quiet venom. Who do you think you are starting over again? Haven't you learned enough pain, enough failure? Have you ever stopped to wonder why your fiercest opposition resides not without, but within? Why the battlefield for change is not the distant horizon, but the immediate landscape of your own mind? You are at a duel where your own doubts become the sharpest daggers, your habits the coldest chains. The enemy you face is not an outside force, but a reflection of your own fears, your own hesitations camouflaged as reason. Comment 1 if you've wrestled with this inner voice when trying to begin anew, or comment 0 if you haven't faced this struggle but recognize the cunning of this internal adversary. And if you seek the wisdom that will silence these whispers forever, subscribe and ring the bell. Don't let the war inside you cost you another lost moment. You see, the fool waits for time to change his fate, believing that the turning of the calendar will erode the hardness of old habits. But the wise man knows discipline is not a gift of time. It is the craft of the moment, fashioned with deliberate choice. Your enemy, that insidious whisper, feeds on delay, thrives in hesitation, and melts away only when confronted by unyielding resolve. This internal saboteur thrives under the guise of humility, as if reminding you of your errors prevents arrogance. Yet it is merely a shadow of fear, paralyzing your first steps and tainting your resolve with the poison of regret. How many beginnings have you let slip because you listened to this voice? How many fresh wins have you refused because you feared the storm? A man who is his own worst enemy is a prisoner in a cell of his own making. But the key lies in recognition. The moment you stop listening to those whispers, you forge freedom from within. The battle for renewal is not won with grand gestures, but with the quiet mastery of your own thoughts, the subtle swaying of doubt toward a firm handshake with action. Remember, energy and persistence conquer all things. Do you possess the persistence to conquer yourself? Or will you let the whisperer win another round, leaving you a spectator in the theater of your own potential? Hold this truth close as you wrestle with your beginnings. The fight you face is ancient, and yet entirely personal, as timeless as the dawn itself. If your enemy is inside, so too is the power to overcome. The next step you take, however small, is not just a motion forward. It is a declaration of sovereignty over your inner kingdom. Embrace this truth, for it is the quiet confidence that will soon make your renewal not a whispered hope, but a proclaimed victory. The war inside you has a rhythm, and soon, with deliberate choice, you will learn to conduct its symphony. You think you need the perfect moment, don't you? A tide so perfectly aligned that every star lights your way without question. But here's the cruel twist. This very yearning for a right time is the very trap that tears your chances apart. It's the watchman who never sounds the bell, waiting endlessly for a signal that will never come. The truth, harsh as the winter frost, is that the right time is always a mirage, a phantom of your own making designed to keep your feet shackled in the quicksand of waiting. Look closer at that phrase you cling to so tenderly. I'm not ready. Read it again, and consider that this assurance of unreadiness is a clever mask for fear, and not the kind that shouts, but the whispering terror that convinces you the worst is yet to come. It's subtraction disguised as prudence, a mathematician who keeps zeroing out your potential from the ledger of your day-to-day. That voice repeats its lie so often, like the distant reverberation of church bells on a foggy morning, until it morphs into a truth you live by. And what does it say to you each time you falter? You need motivation. Motivation, the prized elixir you believe will ignite your soul and propel you into action. Yet motivation is not the steady flame, but a flickering candle. Relying on its capricious glow to light your way is like expecting the wind to always blow from your back. You wait for it to swell, a sailor strapped to the helm but refusing to hoist the sail. Irony smiles bitterly here, for the very act of waiting for motivation drains the reservoir of your resolve. The ancient saw holds firm. Action breeds motivation, not the other way around. These thoughts do not arrive as strangers, but as old friends who have worn the same comforting mask 1,000 times. They nest in familiar corners of your mind, where doubt blends seamlessly with pseudo-rationality, where excuses parade as common sense. This is where your enemy camouflages itself in plain sight. Consider the historical prisoner who converses with his own shadow more than with the world outside. He tells himself his chains are too heavy to lift, that the dawn is years away, that the key is lost somewhere in past failures. Each excuse builds another bar in his mental cell, another layer of self-imposed torture. He is the architect of his own imprisonment, erecting walls with bricks forged from what-ifs and some-days. Are you not this prisoner? And yet, irony cuts deeper still, for in this prison you hold the key in your own hand, but it is dull from disuse. The key is simple. It is the choice to begin despite imperfect conditions, to march forward while shadows of uncertainty trail behind, to move as the river moves, undeterred by the stones beneath its surface. This is the essence of what the enemy wants you to overlook. The paralysis you feel is not in your circumstances, but a reflection of your own mind's refusal to act. The battle is less out there than it is in here, between the whispers that argue for your inertia and the quiet voice that beckons to dare. Each hesitation feeds the beast, each delay fans its flame. So while you wait for clarity, the moment mutates beneath your feet. The longer you linger in uncertainty, the further you drift from the possibility of change, and time, that relentless tide, waits for no man's permission. But why do you let such a corrosive inner adversary govern the script of your life? Because it masquerades as wisdom, as caution, as prudence. It wears the cloak of humility, when in truth it is a reflection of cowardice and indecision. To admit you must change sometimes feels like admitting weakness. And so you build your self-contempt into a fortress, thinking you protect yourself, but instead imprison your progress. Consider the logic of inversion. You believe that solace in waiting and readiness will bring strength. Yet it is exactly this waiting that erodes strength. The sword you imagine sharpening with hesitation dulls with disuse. The field you hope to till by delaying the work gathers only weeds. This internal conflict is not just a struggle, it is a slow erosion of potential. Every moment you surrender to the whisperer inside, you lose a piece of yourself to the shadow of what might have been. This is the true cost of inaction, not merely wasted time, but the gradual dimming of your own light. So, as you stand now at the crossroads, recognize the subtle tyranny of your own thoughts. You are not waiting for the world to align. You are waiting for your mind to relinquish its hold on the familiar weight that drags you down. This recognition is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront the fact that the enemy you fight is no external tyrant, but a reflection, dark and persistent. And with this discomfort comes a choice. Continue to dwell in the gases of excuses, or peel back the veil and see the simple truth beneath. The pain of change is real, but it is no greater than the slow death of your ambitions surrendered to passivity. Remember, a man who waits for motivation is like a gardener who waits for rain to plant his seeds, neglecting the toil that summons growth. The man trapped inside you, chained by his own making, longs desperately to walk free, but has mistaken the chains for protection. The question remains, will you continue in this self-forged captivity, listening to the whisperer that dims your fire? Or will you, in that stirring stillness, grasp the worn but heavy key and turn it decisively, shattering the bars that seemed immovable? This is no mere philosophical musing, it is the stark reality of your condition. The cost of staying as you are is enormous, though it may appear as quiet as a falling leaf. The shadows gather silently, and the years slip through your fingers like water. What price will you pay for comfort in knowing your enemy so intimately? Because in knowing comes responsibility. The responsibility not just to know your foe, but to rise against it. This is the crucible of your future, the great test of whether the man who whispers to himself can become the man who commands his own destiny. Hold these reflections within you, let their weight settle into your bones. Soon you will face the most formidable adversary of all, not the world without, but the relentless whispers within. And only when you conquer this inner voice will the dawn you seek finally break over your horizon, not as hope, but as a conquered truth. The first truth you must own is this: you do not wait for clarity to find you. Clarity emerges when you move. Many cling to the illusion that stillness breeds understanding, that motion is mere chaos before order. But it is movement, the restless cutting through fog, that is the true lantern in the night. You wait for confidence, but confidence is what comes after you act. The path does not reveal itself in the dark. The flame you need is sparked by your own footsteps stirring the dust. Pause long enough, and hesitation grows roots inside your resolve. Yet action is the saw that slices those roots, each deliberate step a carve toward freedom. Discipline is your artisan's chisel. It sculpts liberty from the marble block of routine. Freedom is not born in reckless abandon. It is crafted blade by blade, in the studio of your will. To wait is to praise inertia as a virtue. To act is to proclaim yourself a master of your own fate. Understand this: you're not stuck. You're rehearsing the moment you refuse to perform. Each time you bow to that whisper of delay, you practice captivity. It is the cruelest irony, the stage where you alone hold the script yet squander the spotlight by standing still. Like a man rehearsing his own defeat, you prepare the chains with each silence. Imagine your life as a grand vessel, anchored in a harbor of indecision. The tides of fear rise like storm clouds, threatening to tether you forever. Yet the sea does not wait for permission. It pushes against every chain, calling the ship to venture beyond uncertain shores. Momentum is the mast hoisting the sails. Without it, you drift endlessly, a ghost ship lost to the fog. But even a little wind as small as a whispered promise can tip the balance to voyage. You do not awaken to a storm. You summon the storm by raising your sails despite the sky's uncertain temper. Motion is the thunder that drowns the whisperer's lies, the knife slicing the cord of hesitancy that blinds you. Turn your feet outward, not as an escape, but as a declaration. The ground beneath is no prison, but a stage. Every step forward is an act of rebellion against the gravity of your doubts. The moment you move, you wrest control from the enemy cloaked within. It cannot thrive in the currents you create. It flees from the pulse of motion because movement reveals the emptiness of its power. You do not dismantle it by reasoning, you starve it by doing. If you doubt this truth, consider the paradox of mastery. The man who drifts with no course learns nothing but the shape of lost time. The man who chooses his bearing may stumble, but carves a line through the darkness. Confidence follows action like shadow follows form. The two are inseparable, and neither exists without the other. In this light, waiting is not protection but surrender. You surrender your victory before the battle, your freedom before the fight begins. The enemy inside rejoices in your pause, for it knows the moment of movement is the moment of betrayal. Betrayal to inertia, to delay, to the whispered excuses that wear the face of wisdom. Rise now and reconsider what you believed. You do not seek motivation, you seek motion. The difference is profound. Motivation is a fragile spark. Motion is the steady burn that devours the night. Like a blacksmith forging iron, you must hammer your will into shape through the cadence of action. Motion sets your spirit ablaze. Marvel at the irony. The man who waits for motivation quits before he begins. The man who moves summons the lion, even if he walks with trembling paws. Discipline is freedom's forge. In its fires, you temper the chains into wings. Your enemy is not stronger than you. It is quieter. But your quiet choice to act is revolution. You have been rehearsing doubt as comfort. Now rehearse courage as power. In the gathering silence within you, feel the old barriers crack. Like ice over a spring eager to flood new valleys with life. You are no longer a prisoner of hesitation, but the architect of your own uprising. This is your moment's truth. Motion is the knife that cuts fog. Momentum is the tempest that breaks the dam. You stand at the edge, where the shadows meet the dawn. Not all steps are heroic, but all steps move you from captivity to command. Listen not to the whisperer's lies. Listen to the rising tide within. The war inside you has a rhythm, and you are the maestro ready to raise his baton. The orchestra of your destiny awaits. You do not yet know how the first note will sound, but feel it stirring, a sound that will not be silenced. Prepare yourself, not because you have summoned a clear vision, but because you have summoned the will to begin. The dawn is not a promise, it is a conquest. And you, standing where hesitation ends and action begins, are about to rise, not as one who hopes, but as one who commands. You have several enemies within, silent in their approach and cunning in their disguise. They wear faces you recognize and speak in tongues you've learned to trust. But these quiet foes are thieves, rifling through your inner sanctuary when you believe the coast is clear. Guilt, the oldest trickster, dons the mask of responsibility. It whispers, "If you rest now, who will carry the burden?" Yet behind this cloak lies not noble duty, but a chained prisoner afraid to set himself free. Guilt is a jailer that convinces you to carry the weight of a world that never asked for your shoulders. You think you're protecting others, but you're just defending your pain. Fear prowls like a shadow behind every choice, claiming to be caution's voice. It never pounds on your door. It slips in silently, rearranging your furniture, moving your bed so you no longer see the light through the window. Fear convinces you to stay an inch from what could ignite your life, persuading you that stepping forward risks an invisible cliff. It's not a warning. It's a whispering jailer tightening leashes you can't see. You think fear keeps you safe, but it only cages your becoming. And what of your craving to please, that soft siren singing under the guise of love? It wraps you in the comfort of approval, a warm prison bathed in smiles and nods. The addiction to acceptance is a cunning impostor that convinces you that the sacrifice of your truth is a gift to others. It tangles your voice with golden threads of obligation, turning your desires into debts you must repay with silence. You mistake this slavery for kindness, but it is a mask your true self must eventually shed. Anxiety sneaks in, clutching the banner of perfectionism, promising order but delivering chaos. It forces you to set impossible standards, then punishes each misstep with the sharp sting of judgment. Anxiety is a meticulous artist painting your doubts as brushstrokes of necessity. You believe you're striving for excellence, but in truth, you are caught in a dance choreographed by an unrelenting critic, born not from ambition, but from fear's restless heartbeat. The tempest of emotional reactions masquerades as your personality's storm. When anger flares or tears spill, these outbursts dress themselves as the raw fabric of who you are. They seek sanctuary in your identity, claiming the right to rule your narrative. But emotional fury is often the echo of a deeper silence, a call wrapped in past wounds and hidden unrest. You think these reactions define you, but they more often shackle you deeper into your past than break you into your freedom. Imagine this, the dark house you dwell in, intoxicated by these silent tricksters. At first glance, they seem harmless enough, specters in the corners whispering helpful advice. But when the lights burn brightly, you see the truth. These shadows have been rearranging the furniture, locking doors you did not know were closed. The thief you invited in years ago is now holding the house hostage. You stand before an ornate mirror, its surface shimmering with your reflection. Yet what you see is a stranger framed by fear's tight hold, guilt's heavy chains, and anxiety's relentless grip. Look deeply. This is no mere self. This is a composite of old wounds masquerading as wisdom, an identity forged by survival rather than thriving. Pause. Take this moment to see yourself not as victim nor as villain, but as captive. The chains jingle softly. Will you hear their song or break them in silence? Consider the story of a man named Vigil. Vigil cherished caution, believing every step needed scrutiny before motion. Yet each day he found himself frozen, paralyzed on the threshold of doors marked opportunity. His fear was a quiet tenant, refusing to leave, until one night, Vigil discovered that fear was not guarding him, but robbing his dreams. You think you're being cautious, but you're merely tiptoeing around your freedom's doorstep. Then there was Mercy, the woman who lived to please, wearing smiles like armor. Each nod was a stitch in a garment too tight to let her breathe. Her love was conditional, purchased with her own surrender. One day, Mercy realized her kindness was a chainmail forged not from compassion, but from desperation. You think you're giving, but you're bartering away the soul that yearns for truth. You're told to listen to your feelings, as if they speak the gospel of your identity. But what if the loudest feelings are lies repeated until they seem real? What if anxiety's trembling hands and guilt's heavy shoulders are not you, but the echoes of vanished voices from your past? The enemy inside thrives on repetition and self-justification, recounting tales that survive not through truth, but through your silence and surrender. You think you're protecting yourself with these emotions, but you are merely defending the pain that taught them to live. The quiet tyrants of your heart do not want freedom. They feast on your hesitation and bloom in the soil of unspoken regret. These habits, these identities, are cages built slowly, brick by invisible brick. They grow not in grand gestures, but in the quiet acceptance of old wounds dressed as loyalty to self. To forge a new path, you must first ask who walks the road behind your eyes. A sailor who listens only to the howling wind without seeing the stars will soon lose his way. You have looked outward for enemies, but your greatest adversary sits beside you, dressed in the robes of your own making. The enemy does not storm the gates, it steals the locks. It does not shout in rage, it whispers in patience. It does not batter down doors, it convinces you the doors were never meant to open. To break free, you must learn to recognize these illusions. Guilt hiding as responsibility, fear veiled as vigilance, approval sought as love, anxiety masking as perfection, and emotional chaos cloaked as character. You have been negotiating with what was only meant to be faced. Now it's time, not to run, not to wait, but to stop letting these shadows command your steps.